Blue lights and sirens, yeah, it's time to go. No time to defund us. You should know that we're not perfect. We're human, we're flawed. Just save us some grace for the sake of us all. We're holding that thin blue line, 'cause that's what we do. We don't do it for the glory, we do it for you.
Hello, Vax Choice and Clout Hub community. Thank you so much for joining us today for another episode of In the Lion's Den, hosted by Dr. Bill Lionberger. How are you doing today, Dr. Bill?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited for this upcoming December and Christmas and time with the grandkids, so it's an exciting time.
I'm very excited for today's episode. Today we have Del Bigtree, who, if you are unaware of who he is, which would be shocking, if you're in this movement, watching our shows and things like that, but if you are unfamiliar, Del Bigtree is one of the leading voices of the MAHA movement. He's the former director of communications for Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s 2024 presidential campaign. Del is the founder and CEO of the Informed Consent Action Network, or ICAN, and host of the High Wire, an award-winning program with over 400 million views worldwide. He's an Emmy-winning former producer of The Doctors and executive producer of An Inconvenient Study. Del brings a sharp, multi-layered approach to exposing regulatory fraud and industry influence across vaccines, pharmaceuticals, food safety, and emerging technologies. Through ICAN, he has filed more than 1,000 FOIA requests and won landmark lawsuits against the federal agencies, including HHS, NIH, FDA, and CDC, cases that forced the release of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine trial data, the CDC's V-Safe injury records, and helped restore Mississippi's long-denied religious exemption. He continues to work to challenge the system shaping public health and personal freedoms in America. So this is a big one for me. I'm sure as many other people. So Dr. Bill, I will be in the background enjoying the show, and I'll be back at the end for questions.
Fantastic. So today's show, The Lion's Den, the name of the show is Vaccines, Bot Science, Broken Children, and the Dark Truth. Where basically pharma's bought and paid for science gets cross-examined, and where the first duty is not to their profits, but to your children. That is our first duty. If you still believe your body, your child, and your choices belong to you, you're in the right place. They told us trust the science. What they never told us was who owns it, who writes it, and who gets rich every time a child pays the price. They never told us the science they sold us was designed, funded, and scripted by the very corporations that profit when our kids are injected, damaged, and our questions get silenced. For decades, unelected agencies and pharmaceutical giants have ruled by slogan, not by proof, fast-tracking products, dodging real double-blind safety trials, and hiding behind legal shields while families bore the consequences and are told their children's injuries are all a coincidence. At the heart of this corruption lies the pharmaceutical toxin empire, which has wrapped itself in the language of care and safety, while working hand in glove with the captured regulators, gagged or paid off scientists, and the compliant media to sell products first and ask hard questions never. Behind the slogans and press conferences sit secret contracts, liability shields, missing safety data, and the trail of families whose injuries are met with denial, gaslighting, and arrogant silence. Our children are not collateral damage, and informed consent is not a conspiracy theory. We have followed the proper paper trail, the gag orders and the broken studies to expose how a system sold as public health became a business model built on captured and corrupt regulators that have censored dissent. In the Lion's Den today, we put pharmacy and pharma's story of safe and effective in the crosshairs. We will find the revolving door between industry and oversight, the indemnities that protect corporations while parents are left alone with the fallout, and finally, the censorship that treats informed consent as a threat instead of a right. Our children are not experimental markets and collateral damage. Parents are not the enemy for asking what is in the syringe and what it does to developing bodies and brains. Fundamental human right to refuse a medical product. especially for your child, is not up for negotiation, no matter how loud the slogans or how strong the pressure. If you're done being managed by fear, bullied by mandates, and shamed for demanding proof instead of promises, you're not alone and you're in the right place. And with that, I would like to bring on our very special guest today, Del Bigtree.
It is really good to be here, Bill. Thanks for having me. And I, after that opening, I'm not sure what's left to share, but you have it nailed to the wall. And, I sit listening to that, Bill, honestly, and I try to imagine if I just came in from, let's just flash back 10 years ago where no one could talk about vaccines. But for these people that really believe in the program, if I sat and listened to everything you just said, I try to imagine how that sinks in, right? There's no purpose for you and I to have this conversation with everyone that already agrees with us, that has done this research. My work is always, is there a different way? Is there a way we can put this that is palatable to people or understandable to people that still are really buying into this system? So, I just was reflecting on that as I listened to it. It's all true what you said, but how does that sink in on a person that this is, in a way, their church? What you're saying is this religion you've been practicing is full of corruption, liars, thieves, pedophiles, if you will, issues that are being hidden from you. And none of it is based in any sort of reality. None of it has a savior that has walked this earth, yet it has convinced you that it's there. And so it really is, as we jump into this conversation today, I always think this is really, when you say science, like who owns the science? I think the more important question is, what is science? Because science, as we know it, is not what we're discussing here. Science is a fantastic thing. Science loves to be challenged. Science is all about, it states as its, central state of being, the science is never settled. That is science. So every time we hear anybody trying to convince us that the science is settled and that no one should be questioning it, you have now immediately, you've got to realize you've just put on a pair of glasses and now you're in they live. Right now we're in a totally different world. We are not discussing science now. What we're discussing is religion. Religion demands faith. It demands belief, or the word you use, it demands trust us. Trust the science. You don't need to investigate this yourself. You shouldn't be asking any questions. We've already got it figured out for you. Well, you can adhere to that, but recognize that there's nowhere in the definition of science that would use that as its definition. That is the definition of a religion. And so what we're about to discuss here, Bill, is the most powerful religion in the world.
And I use the words trust the science because that's kind of the foundation for the propaganda that's been rammed down our throats for decades. And, part of the COVID debacle that literally has unraveled at the seams, and leads us to an inconvenient study. Yes?
Yes.
Which is really enlightening. And I think that begins to lay a better foundation of truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the film that right now is careening towards 100 million views worldwide. We just released it back in October. It's doing amazingly well. For anyone, any moment in this podcast, you can go and you can watch it for free. You can download it. You can share it. You can own it. You can do whatever you want with it. Just go to aninconvenientstudy.com. But at the heart of that study is really, how would we prove our position, Bill? The position being what you just stated, there is no science. It's been bought and paid for. There's been no proper safety studies of any of the vaccines we're giving our children. This is something that I do not state based on an opinion. I state it because my nonprofit has the most successful legal team in this space to ever challenge the government. We have sued every government health agency and won. I've won against the CDC, the FDA, NIH, Health and Human Services. And as you've pointed out, not only have we won against the government, we've then taken what they've admitted in courts, which is there is no science that they can give us, that this mountain of evidence that exists on the safety of vaccines does not exist. That's what we sued for. Hand it to us. Where is it? They can't provide it. It doesn't exist. And that's what they've admitted in court multiple times. And then we go into states like Mississippi, where they are forcibly vaccinating, as they, the mandate exists across this country, but there's only a few states that don't allow you to opt out. Mississippi was one. And last year we won back the religious exemption for Mississippi students so that kids can go to school without being vaccinated if they want. And I'll tell you right now, breaking news, I'm going to announce it on the High Wire this week. We just won in West Virginia. Every kid in West Virginia is now allowed to go to school based on religious exemption. That is years and years in the making. My nonprofit, I just want to give a shout out to everybody that sponsors the work that we do. We're a nonprofit. That is one of the biggest wins of all times. Mississippi was huge. To do it twice means we're on to something. And, there's going to be appeals. There's going to be pushback because they realize that we are bringing down this castle that has been built on sand. But at the heart of it, to get back to an inconvenient study, if you've never done a safety trial, you've never tested any vaccine we've given to our children, and this you can take to the bank, despite what any expert might say in the New York Times, you will never see them provide a placebo-based trial of any of the childhood vaccines that we give our kids. They are now admitting this for the most part. And what they're saying is we don't have to test the current vaccines against saline placebos. In fact, it'd be unethical to do so. But we did test the current vaccines against the older versions that they themselves were then tested against saline placebos. Therefore, that safety is carrying over, and we're just comparing with the newer product. That also is a lie. There is no placebo trial of the original versions either. And that is the last part of this argument that I'm really fighting in courts and fighting in the media, because it's just simply not true. They cannot provide a saline placebo of any of the vaccines, even prior to the ones that we're taking. So we're on the verge of absolutely decimating any semblance of what you would call science. But how would we prove now? In the end, all that says is, okay, well, they haven't done the science. That doesn't mean the vaccines aren't safe. It just means they never proved that they're safe. And so now we have a problem, which is we've never done the proper science. And so how do we figure out if vaccines are causing autism? How do we figure out if vaccines are causing ADHD? How do we figure out vaccines are, let me use a softer word, contributing to eczema and asthma and lupus and multiple sclerosis and diabetes? All of these things that are currently skyrocketing in every kid in America with no known cause. If vaccines are one of the major contributors to the greatest decline in human health that has ever been recorded, which is what we're watching right now, to be clear, in the 1980s, the chronic disease rate of American children was about 12.8%. 12.8% of our kids had either a neurological disorder or an autoimmune disease. Now in 2025, actually since about 2015, we've known that rate is now 54% of America's children have chronic disease. So from 12.8% to 54% is the greatest decline in human health ever recorded. So something's doing it. There's, as Bobby Kennedy and any decent scientist alive on this planet would say, epidemics like that, like when you see a giant rise in decline of health, it cannot be caused by genetics. So something environmental is doing it. And the work that we've been doing is that we have a hunch that a major contributor is vaccines. How would you tease that out, though? Well, you would have to do a study where you take children that have, basically live in the same area, have many of the same approaches to life, only one major difference. One group is not taking any vaccines and the other group is. That is what's at the heart of an inconvenient study. Back in 2016, Bill, as you know, I was traveling with a documentary called Vaxxed, From Cover Up to Catastrophe. Many credit that film with igniting the medical freedom movement around the world. Of course, that was a movie about a study about vaccines and autism that happened at the CDC. We had a whistleblower at the CDC, Dr. William Thompson, come forward and said, we committed fraud in that study. We saw a correlation between the MMR vaccine and autism. But if you want to get into that, we can get into that later. While I was traveling with that film, I was going to be traveling through Detroit, Michigan. We were on about a 1-year tour that lasted about a year with that film, sold out audiences every single day, 5 shows a day, 7 days a week. It was incredible. But as I was passing through Detroit, someone reached out that loved Vaxxed and said, hey, I know the head of infectious disease at Henry Ford Health. Henry Ford Health is one of the greatest research institutes in the world. And so they said, would you like to meet him? I can talk him into having dinner with you. I said, of course. I would love to have that conversation. So we met for dinner in Detroit in 2016, and he sat down with me, and he actually surprised me. I was expecting a fairly hostile, dinner where I was planning on and challenging him on the safety of vaccines. But he led out by saying, Del, I've watched your film. It's very compelling. But you've been saying something as you're traveling the country. I see these YouTube videos that keep popping up. You're saying something that I found very disturbing. You keep saying that they've never done the proper science to establish that vaccines are safe. And he said, so I took issue with that, and I sit on the biggest databases in the world. That's how we do the research that we do at Henry Ford Health. So I went to investigate all of the background safety science around vaccines so I could bring it to you. And he said, and I'm shocked that I have to sit across from you and tell you that you're right. None exists. There are no placebo trials of any of the childhood vaccines. It's like, I'm shocked that that is the case. He said, now, and to the point I made earlier, he said, that doesn't mean that vaccines aren't safe. It just means we can't say that they're safe. And I said, and yet you do 24 hours a day on every news channel, every scientist, every news anchor makes that statement exactly. And so that's where I have an issue. And he said, so that's how the dinner started. He ultimately said, I don't know what I can do about it, Del. I mean, it is problematic. I still believe in the vaccine program. And I said, would you ever do a study comparing vaccinated to unvaccinated? And he said, yeah, I would do that study. And I said, then I think you should. And I think, if you did, we could get to the bottom of this issue that is creating a civil war almost in this country between parents that believe vaccines are dangerous and those that believe they're the greatest invention of the 20th century. Let's get to the bottom of it. We can prove it. And so it took 4 years for him to finally do the study. He did it in 2020. And then suddenly he went silent. He refused to publish it, wouldn't submit it to peer review. Finally, I got him on a phone. I said, what's going on, Dr. Zerbos? And he says, I cannot publish this study. I was like, what do you mean you cannot? You can't or you won't? He's like, I won't. And I said, I don't understand. He ultimately said to me at that time, Del, when I agreed to do this study, I did not realize that I would be agreeing to ending the vaccine program as we know it. And I said, what do you mean? I mean, it's just a study. He said, yeah, I know. I was like, is the study that bad? He's like, Del, it's that bad. And I don't want to be the person that ended the vaccine program. So that's how the conversation went for a couple of years. I finally asked him to dinner in 2022. I took recording equipment, hidden cameras, and I went and had dinner with him. And that's at the heart of an inconvenience study. If you want to see what he says, as he hands me the study, I'll talk about some of the data if you'd like. But really, you have to see the film to watch a world-renowned scientist, totally pro-vaccine, that set out to do a study to prove that we were wrong and ended up having a study that is the most damning indictment of our vaccine program that has ever been witnessed. Of course, the study's still unpublished, but we decided the world needed to see what it was about, and that's an inconvenient study. Everyone should watch this film. And even if you think you understand this issue, I don't think you've ever seen it laid out this clearly. This is a tool. This is an ICBM missile on this issue. Everyone should take it. Everyone should share it with everyone they know.
When you say, you make the comment, medically there's no cause, right? The other side, we'll call them that, says, well, medically we can't really prove causation. It's so disingenuous. You can math the science out of this thing, okay? You can look at the number, what are we, 73 plus and counting vaccines on the schedule and rising. We're the most vaccinated country in the world, and yet you can look at the correlation between all of the conditions and many more that you mentioned and the books that are written about it that you've been involved with and others. In terms of all of these correlations, literally, you can look at our side. Our side is we work with the vaccine injured every day. We work with the parents with the vaccine injured children, or the parents that don't want the vaccine injured children, right? And that's not hyperbole. That's reality. The reality is there's more than just the theory here, okay? And those of us...
Look, I'm all, Bill, let's be as honest as we can about the argument about what you just said. What they will say is you don't have proof that the vaccine caused the injury. We are, as you and I both know, I'm interviewing parents that claim their children were injured by vaccines. So are you. I have seen enough of those stories by lawyers and doctors with video footage saying, I love you, mommy, I love you, daddy. And then that was the day we went and got the vaccine, and this is them drooling in a diaper, and they've never spoken since. So we've seen that anecdotal evidence, but let's admit, the other side is saying you are making a causal attachment, based on timing to that event. But what they will say is it's easy to blame vaccines because kids are getting vaccines all the time. And it just happens to be that natural occurrence, that the seizures that suddenly appeared at 2 years old, that was going to happen naturally. The fact that they were speaking to you and then suddenly lost the ability to speak, really, that was you just not recognizing your child was always autistic. Maybe they weren't even speaking to you. Oh, you have video footage. Well, that happens. Sometimes kids just stop speaking, suddenly start drooling, start having seizures, and then stare at the wall and play with, cars the rest of their life, toys, and never speak again. I mean, but I just want to be clear, Bill, if we're going to win this right now, let's at least point out what they're saying to us, right? You don't have proof of a causal relationship. So how do we get there, Bill? That has been my task for the last, since 2016 when vax came out. What is proof? How much proof? How many anecdotal stories do we need to get to the truth? Can we get a placebo trial where one group gets the vaccines and one group doesn't? And then we have all the confounding issues they'll bring up. But go ahead. I mean, Bill, I'm trying to approach this in a way we've never done before. Let's be really honest of what we do have and what we don't. And if the other side really cares, why aren't you working with us to get to the bottom of these answers? Why are you stopping all science from being done altogether? It's suspicious, man. It's really suspicious.
Well, one of the things to your point is we do have some of the science and data. Within 72 hours of vaccination, we have data that shows problems. We have within 7 days, another set of statistics that show problems. Now, if you were trying to put a regular medicine through, not a vaccine, and you had these kinds of signals, it would trigger all kinds of other things to happen. Pull it down, go evaluate it. But in vaccines, for some strange reason, the triggers don't go off. And another piece that's important, we do have in the vaccine court, we have some fissures now. We have 4 or 5 cases that just came through, and not just correlation, but causation and winning cases from vaccine injury in one of the most difficult courts in the land, right?
Yes. I mean, you're right. So to fill in the gap on some of what you've just said with data, which is all that we can do here, this is science. And remember, people will say, Del, you're not a scientist, you're not a doctor. Yeah, I'm a journalist. I just do research. I know how to look things up. I know how to put a team of scientists together, and I know how to bring that research and explain it to people. But here's what you're talking about. You're talking about SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, right? One of the dumbest. I mean, the fact that there's something named that in medicine, right? Sudden infant death syndrome. Why don't they just say spontaneous death syndrome? Spontaneously combusted in death. I mean, that's how dumb this statement is. It's so unscientific, but we really don't know what's causing it. But to your point, when you look at all of the reports of SIDS, what we recognize is that over 70% of them are happening within 2 days of vaccination. If vaccinations are happening every 3 to 6 months, depending on what part of the schedule you're in, if we're going to look at science, we should be seeing a pretty even space out of those babies that are dying across all the days of those 90 days. Or 120 days or whatever you want to look at. But instead, when you see it all grouped, not right before the vaccination, by the way, you don't see any happening there. There's nothing happening 1 day, 2 days before vaccination. But holy cow, right after vaccination, that's where all these reports are happening. Pretty good anecdotal evidence, right? As it stacks up, as you're pointing out, any other drug in the world, we would immediately halt everything. Babies are dying. And of course, we've just heard this week, the FDA now admitting that they know for sure 10 babies were killed. 10 kids have been killed by the COVID vaccine. And then also Supreme Court, in the vaccine court, just 2 weeks ago, one of the first cases in a while, it used to be more often, But we have now a case where an 11-month-old baby turned blue and died in their crib 5 hours after receiving 10 vaccines. I believe that was in court for almost 10 years because, boy, they don't want to ever admit it, and they're going to torture you and make it so expensive that they never lose, but they just did. Causal relationship between 10 vaccines at one time, an 11-month-old baby killed them 5 hours later. That's going to open the floodgate. And we can look at things like during COVID, when we know that the vaccination rates dropped. They were complaining about it every headline because no one wanted to go near a hospital. Who would? You couldn't get to a loved one. They were separating you. It was like Alcatraz, instead of a hospital. It's there to protect you. It's there to separate you and block you. So no one was taking their kids in for vaccines. And guess what? The SIDS rate absolutely crashed during COVID and didn't exist for the years that we weren't going near hospitals. So look at. Take that as you will, but just to back up all the points you've just made there, Bill, it's all backed up by data. And what else are we going to do? What else do we have to look at?
Right. And again, the math and the data speaks volumes. If you can go to the VAERS, the underreporting in VAERS, but the amount of injuries and death that were reported would have stopped pretty much any drug. But again, there wasn't a signal, or we're artificially clamping down on that for X reason, right? The reason is pharma doesn't want it. Pharma doesn't support it. Pharma's making money. They don't want to change the status quo, right?
Right.
That's really the root of this problem, and it doesn't go away. No matter how anybody wants to try to sugarcoat it, how many advertising pieces go out there, you got to come back to, all of these bad elements all collected in the same place. And there are cracks in the system. We're going to continue to open up those cracks and get inside, just like, whistleblowers, in every facet to help us get the real information. Back when we were looking at VAERS, we had a whistleblower that came out and gave us other database information that we didn't have. And then we got the DMED database and it continued to grow from there, and we look at the really incredible information from DMED regarding the military and how accurate that's supposed to be, and you can't look away from the reality here. So we're back to parents.
Well, just to that point, though, let me just interject this very quickly. You're like my Jeffrey Jackson today. People that watch the show and Jeffrey Jackson comes on, it's so sorry to be interrupting you. But here's what's amazing, Bill. The DMED data, you're talking about the military data. Skyrocketing rates of heart attacks amongst the military suddenly happen after they're getting the COVID vaccine, right? Things like that just become so blatantly obvious. But here's what's amazing about science and medicine for everyone that's still on that side. Your side only attacks the science. They only say, well, there's explanations for that, or it was a bad study, or that person that put that out there was corrupt. They were an anti-vaxxer. It's always excuse why we're seeing it. But what you never see them do is say, here's a study where we did take the data, we crunched it and showed you those that got the vaccine and those that didn't, and look at here's the outcome the vaccinated are doing better. No one can show you that study, not in the military, not in any military in the world, not in any major medical institution in the world, not in any regulatory agency in the world. There is no one in the world that shockingly over the last 50 years of vaccines has ever been able to show you unequivocally we compared vaccinated to unvaccinated, and the vaccinated are healthier. There have been almost 10 studies that have done it and show the exact opposite. The recurring, reproducible science that now exists shows that if you compare these two groups, the unvaccinated 100% of the time are healthier. And I'm not talking a little bit. We're talking so much healthier. The skyrocketing rates of chronic disease is sitting directly in the population of vaccinated. So that's it. They can sit there and they can put down the science and try to poke holes in it, but why can't they produce their own science? If these products were designed to make us healthier, shouldn't that be the easiest thing to show us? And yet they cannot show that.
The reason that the doctor from Henry Ford didn't want to come forward and destroy his basically career and then change vaccination forevermore is because of that very point. The point is the real science is settled. The unvaccinated are healthier than the vaccinated. That's the real science, which is settled at this time. You go look at the Amish for just throw it in there for a minute, okay? They don't vaccinate. They don't have SIDS. They don't have these childhood injuries. They don't have any of it. They're down to goose eggs, okay? What don't they do? What do? They have a healthy lifestyle, healthy food, healthy, but they don't vaccinate, right?
Right.
That's the wild herring that people tend to want to put it off in the corner. It's the reality. You bring it up front and center and face it head on, because that's the problem that we're dealing with, and we can't get around it, and we're going to have to deal with it because it's going to have to change. And that's why we're in the fight in Frontline Health Advocates, where we help people with escaping the jabs. That's where your education helps people to understand why they want to do that and all the ways that they can get in the fight in all of these state institutions that have captured basically the space. They have captured the medical institutions. They've captured the doctors. They've captured it all so that they can't get the help that they need. So It's taking your lawsuits to make it happen, right?
Look, here's one of my biggest beef, Bill, is that every drug has side effects, right? We know that. We see it. Every commercial has to list those side effects. In fact, Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy Jr. have done a really nice job of making them list even more of the side effects. So these commercials are going to get really long and even more disgusting than they already were, which is sort of the penance in order to stay on television. But every drug has side effects, and every doctor is taught how to handle the side effects. Usually, the first thing saying, let's stop giving you that drug, right? You're having a bad reaction. Why is it that no one in medicine is being taught how to handle all the known side effects of vaccines that are listed on a label that you never see? They're wrapped around the vaccine that's being delivered to your doctor, but your doctor never reads it. Your doctor's being told these are safe and effective, and if someone complains about an injury, you tell them it's not possible the vaccines did it. That is crazy. Why are we allowing medicine to avoid known side effects? There's paralysis, there's Guillain-Barré syndrome, and transverse myelitis. Some of these issues, if you were given antibiotics or you're taken care of immediately as a vaccine injury, you wouldn't be paralyzed your whole life. But no doctor's being taught that is even possible. And so unlike, as you said, where we would pull back drugs that have too many side effects when we saw what's happening in vaccines, we would at least teach doctors that injury is real. Everybody, no single drug and no vaccine is safe for everybody. There's going to be reactions to poor, unfortunate children and adults that we didn't know were susceptible and had a weakness that was somehow exacerbated by the vaccine. If that happens, here's what you do. Rush into an ER, start running fluids, give them an antibiotic, bring down their fever, whatever the case may be. And instead of that being how science and medicine handles you when you are having a vaccine injury, they gaslight you and tell you it's all in your head. You're making it up. You're not really paralyzed until you are fully paralyzed. Oops, our bad. Well, I guess you were always going to be paralyzed. I mean, it's that crazy. They're not dealing with, it's anti-science to believe there's anything on this planet that is perfectly safe. There's nothing. There's not a piece of food I could give everyone in a stadium where someone's not going to have an allergic reaction. And science doesn't ignore you. It doesn't say you're making it up when you're vomiting all over yourself and having seizures. It says, let me jump in there. Let's clean your system. Whatever you just ate, you're having a reaction. Whatever we just injected into you, you're having a reaction. Why is science not at least doing that?
It raises a couple of questions, Del. First of all, most of the practitioners really, honestly, can't tell you what's in these vaccines.
No.
If you were to take them to task and begin to get into the weeds on the questions, they would be lost in the weeds. That's the truth of it. The next thing is this. When you talk about training, here's what they're being trained in. They're being trained in how to coerce you. That's literally part of their training. How do I force you, coerce you? Why? There's money involved. For the doctors, they get incentives. Okay, this is really important because the doctors are getting an incentive. If they have a certain percentage of their practice that's vaccinated at the end of the year, they get a big bonus. Do they tell that to the patient? Oh, by the way, if you come on board, Sally, I'm going to get a big bonus and I'm going to kick some back to you or whatever. Did they tell them the story and what's going on behind the scenes? No. The reality is that they're being trained to coerce, trained to basically try to force you into this. And some of it's financial and some of it is whatever. But at the end of the day,
and you make really good points. I want to point out, yes, I don't want to say that doctors are greedy and that's the reason they're making this decision. That's not. I really do believe, because I've met many doctors that really think what they're doing is right. So they're not purposely engineering your child so that they can make a buck. And oftentimes they're not the ones that directly see that bonus, because these hospital systems are so big now. It's the hospital saying, if your vaccine rate drops below 98%, we're going to fire you from our system, not being told that the hospital system is getting a multi-million-dollar kickback from the insurance companies for hitting these milestones. But all that to say that ultimately there are incentives, but the doctor is not being told the truth. Why is it teaching you to bully you? Bill, right. It's just like if you're in the military. There's a reason why we bring in 18-year-olds and not 35-year-olds into boot camp. Because if you scream, charge that bunker to a 35-year-old, they're going to be, well, hold on a second, there's bullets coming out of that bunker. I mean, is anyone going to stop the bullets before I charge? Like, hold on, you're not allowed to ask a question. Charge the bunker. That's your state. That's your mandate. You go do it for America. That is exactly how doctors are being treated. I'll take it a step further. They're saying, give the vaccine no matter what. And if someone starts asking questions, you shut them down, you bully them, you intimidate them, and you threaten to kick them out of the practice. Because here's why, Bill, they don't trust doctors. They know if they told doctors, let us inform you better. It would be like telling an Army agent, or someone in the Army that's going to charge that bunker, we're going to give you all the reasons we're in this war. We're going to give you our entire strategy. They're not going to do it. What if you get captured? What if you get caught outmanned by someone smarter than you? You're going to hand over important information. We need you to be stupid. We need you to charge that bunker with no information whatsoever. That's safer for us. It's safer for you. That is how doctors are being treated. It's not their fault. They're not being given information because nobody at CDC or FDA trusts that a doctor is capable of explaining the science with a mother or a father that is well-read, has a law degree, or God forbid, a science degree, and starts asking questions like, what's in the vaccine? What are the ingredients? Well, what do those ingredients do? Why are they there? Why is there aluminum, a known neurotoxin? Why is that in the vaccine? Can you show me a study where you've ever tested the safety of aluminum being injected in a human being? And then if the doctor tries to make an excuse, well, I'll tell you, because I'm Del Bigtree and I know it'd be illegal to do that study because you're not allowed to inject a neurotoxin into somebody with no benefit whatsoever. You're not allowed to do that test. It would be illegal to simply poison people as a part of a study in America. But boy, we'll put it in the vaccines without any safety and never do that study. And so they know no doctor can handle people with the truth. So you're better off bullying, pull out that gun, charge that bunker, shoot everything in sight. If you die, so be it. We'll lose you. We don't care. But don't ever allow questions to be asked because you can't handle the truth.
You know, you raise an important point about what's in the vaccines, and you mentioned aluminum, thimerosal, mercury. Let's see, how much mercury are you supposed to have? Oh, you're not supposed to. It's one of the most dangerous substances on the planet. Oh, okay. And then what does OSHA say about how much you should have? Oh, none. Oh, you shouldn't have any exposure. And then how many shots with how much mercury, thimerosal, aluminum are you going to get over the life of that child? And how many times does that exceed the threshold every time? And then how much of that have you informed consent with the parent, the family, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen, like you're saying, because they don't want them to probably know that level. You know, it's kind of like going to the dentist and remember we had the amalgam questions about that, you know what I mean? And they all had the argument, oh, no, it can't. And then we had all the science that said, yes, it can, right?
As you've just pointed out, there is no good answer to that question. It'd be like, how much radiation is good to inject into your body? Like on purpose? None.
Right.
I mean, mercury is the second most toxic substance on Earth. Let's be clear. Robert Kennedy Jr. has finally banned all mercury. And it was like the end of the world. Like, oh my God, we needed our mercury vaccines. It's the craziest thing we've ever seen, the attacks on Bobby Kennedy. But let's take it away from aluminum or mercury. Let's take it to something simpler. Like, how about aborted fetal DNA? How about the DNA of dead babies? Anyone with a brain, anyone that's been alive on this earth and knows about modern medicine knows that if I put foreign protein into a human body, like in the form of a heart transplant or a liver transplant or anything like that, what do we have to do? We've got to put you on antibiotics, basically on drugs the rest of your life, or, and shut down your immune system so your immune system doesn't attack that foreign protein and destroy you, right? So how is it that it would be acceptable to inject foreign protein in the form of DNA from a dead baby Why is it there? Because that was the substrate used to grow varicella, the measles vaccine. In order to get measles, they grew it on the DNA of dead babies. Sometimes they used the DNA of chimpanzees or the DNA of hamsters, all of which, by the way, did you remember when they were trying to put, was it pig hearts and, pig hearts and baboon hearts, and people? It didn't work, right? So hamster kidneys just as bad as human kidneys. But the point is where is the safety study that said it was okay to inject billions, by the way, of particles of other babies' DNA, of other monkeys' DNA, of other hamsters' DNA and worms? These products, by the way, of all the products you could ever imagine giving a free ride, saying should have no liability and don't ever need to be safety tested, of all the products I would do that with, would not be the one that has heavy metals, toxic chemicals, polysorbate 80, and then hamster kidney cells and monkey and lung fibroblasts and dead babies' DNA, all of this, none of it safety tested.
And if you told that to the parents, really, and that's just the opening salvo, right?
That's it.
Del,
Yeah,
I mean, what about
there.
What about SV40? And we actually know it causes cancer. And then what did they do? They snuck it into they took it out of the one that they got for the authorization, and they put it back in. All of the behind the scenes stuff that people really don't necessarily know. The reality is, if you knew all of that and had real informed consent as I'm just Joe parent. And you go down the list of questions, really, of all the reasons why you would do something versus what am I protecting against? Oh, that hasn't been around for a million years. Again, I'm going to risk all of these things and then compound it with all of these others,
right?
And then keep adding to it. With not one test, even testing when you combine them. Okay, not even testing that, right? So, I mean, there's no real rational person, I believe, that would, when they look at that reality, would be signing up for vaccines, right?
Right. How many human beings ever in nature caught measles, mumps, and rubella all at the same time? I mean, just, in all honesty, they'll say, well, I mean, your kids are digging through all these microbes all the time. Yeah, but how many documented cases of measles, mumps, and rubella at the same time? Just curious. Because that's what you're running the body through with an MMR vaccine. You're not doing it once, you're doing it twice, and then they're adding another one now in college and 2 or 3 more MMRs. So let's just do this throughout life. Also, by the way, let's bring into this point, Bill, that the entire goal of the vaccine program was to emulate what nature was doing so brilliantly, which was after one week-long infection, you are immune for life. You're done, man. You are a warrior. You are out there. You can never catch measles again. No vaccine has been able to achieve that level of protection. So you don't get infected once like you would have naturally. Now it's like 3 shots of this and 6 shots of that and over again. COVID, perfect example. 10 shots now I think we're on because the product sucks. It can't do what it was meant to do, which is protect you or anybody else. Same thing with measles. When you see more than one, what they're telling you is does not actually create protection, does not create lasting protection. So we're even failing to achieve what the goal was. These morons of science have never done what God and nature did so perfectly. So, I mean, it's a failure. Everywhere you look, Bill, there's no part of this system that makes any sense. They've never achieved. They suck at what they do. They're only really making you sicker, it appears, and they're helping spread viruses and keep them alive all around this planet. Some of that, I mean, would take even more explanation, but you know it to be true.
In theory, the concept, right, of being able to vaccinate someone and protect them from something serious, in theory, it has a theoretical positive side to it, right?
Love it. No, it's great.
They've never been able to do it. The reality is that if you actually take it to the next step, then whatever that X piece is should not be more dangerous than the thing you think you're going to protect against. Correct. And it should not give it to you. I happen to be vaccine injured, right? I got a shingles vaccine many years ago before I learned more than I know now. And it gave me shingles. I mean, permanent injury. Okay.
I can imagine many benefits to, making pigs so that they can fly. It'd be
Right.
fantastic. There's a lot of things we could do. Shipping pork across the country would be a lot easier if they could just fly there. But in
Right.
the end, you're going to have to pull it off, right?
Right.
It's a perfectly noble idea. Let's make that clear. If you could just, in fact, somehow knock down a piece of virus, make it not as deadly as it might be on its own, and have no other, nefarious or bad effect on the body, great. Great. And you just do it one time, all right. But
Right.
they've never achieved it. And they've certainly, once you had to start adding aluminum, neurotoxins, and mercury, and formaldehyde, and polysorbate 80, now and antibiotics like neomycin and all of these things, once you started having to add those things to make it work, we're off the reservation, idiots. You no
Right.
longer have a safe product. This isn't, now you are more dangerous. Now it's the virus plus all of this bull crap. If you could have done it without all of the adjuvants, which is what we call those things that are, basically inciting your immune system, inflaming your immune system, right? That's what it's doing. It's causing inflammation throughout the body. And unfortunately, for those kids that are having a serious reaction, it's obvious their brain is swelling. The vaccine is designed to swell your body, to create inflammation so that your immune system will go, oh my God, I'm under attack. I have inflammation. What's going on? Oh my God, I've been injected with a known neurotoxin, aluminum, and there's MMR, there's measles, mumps, and rubella. What's happening to my body right now? Great, okay. For some of us, your body kicks into gear, does a really good job of stopping it. But what happens if that inflammation in your whole body suddenly slips up, gets into your brain? It's simple, and it's why it's written on every insert of every vaccine: encephalitis. If it gets out of control, we have no way of stopping it. We set up a nuclear bomb in your body. If the atoms don't, they keep splitting and somehow get up in your brain and do it, you're effed. Sorry, we're going to act like it never happens, even though we wrote it in the warning label of almost every vaccine you're taking. I
So
mean, the mechanisms are there, Bill, like as you know it. It's not like we're like conspiracy theorists. It's written in the freaking label warning us that it can do this. By its nature, it's designed to do this.
So, the pharmaceutical companies have been sued a lot, and they've lost a lot. Now, it's good business for them, though, to get sued, because that means they made a lot of money, right? Because they're still not turning things off. People come to me and say, they're creating patients for life, literally from birth on, because of the poison that is in these, basically all of the different constructs and chemicals and ingredients that mix in some sort of a cauldron in your body and then create these antigen reactions. The body's good at determining what self is. It's also good at determining what's not self. And when stuff comes in, your body reacts, and so many things happen that are almost beyond imagination. But patients for life. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. I'm not a conspiracy theorist,
Okay.
even though if you look me up on Wikipedia, I'm probably,
Top of the list.
if I'm not the reigning king, I'm close to it. But I want to make this clear. Everything I have said so far, I have evidence of it. I've won in court with it. I can prove it.
Yeah.
I cannot win in court with the statement that they're vaccinating in order to create future patients. Now, do all the dots line up sort of like an anecdotal story? Absolutely. But I haven't seen the smoking gun yet. I haven't found the internal email that says if we can give kids this many vaccines, then 54% of them will be in chronic disease. And then we'll give them all of the, basically look what every drug is, right? And this is, let's just break it down for a second, Bill. When you watch your television set, and I want people to get this, that TV is a billboard in your house. I worked in television. I worked at CBS. I worked on the daytime talks with the doctors. This is what everyone that works in TV knows, but you don't at home. We don't see that as, an expression of our artistic creativity. We have one job and one job only: to keep as many eyeballs on that billboard as we can. Our entertainment does not matter to the pharmaceutical industry, except that how many eyeballs were watching at minute 10, how many eyeballs were watching at minute 20, how many at 30, 40, and I get sat down by my boss, my executive producer, Del, your shows are falling off. They're falling off at minute 45, and now the investors, which is the pharmaceutical industry, 70% of the advertising, they want to reduce what they're going to pay us for that commercial time because we have less eyeballs. So whatever you're doing, get more eyeballs. Not Del, what you're doing was emotional. It was great. I love the connection between, or the story you're telling, or your sitcom had so many laughs. They don't care. They don't care how many laughs. They don't care how many tears. What they care is how many people were still watching 45 minutes in because there's a billboard there and we need to sell drugs. That's what it's there for, okay? So once you realize that and you recognize what's going on and you want to test me on that, count the ads. Spend this next week. Do yourself a favor and count the ads on especially your news shows. If you think your news is going to tell you the truth about pharma, go ahead and count what percentage of the advertising is on that network, on that news anchor, and recognize that's their daddy, that's who's paying the bill, and trust me, they're not going to say anything that hurts that advertising. But what are they advertising, Bill? What they're advertising is immune system blockers, ways to shut down your immune system. This drug will shut down your immune system to get rid of that eczema because your body's overreacting. This drug is going to shut down, the antibodies that are attacking your pancreas. We're going to shut down your immune system, shut down your immune system, shut down your immune system. Why? Because your immune system's out of control. It's overreacting. Every drug you're watching, all of these autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, eczema, psoriasis, plaque psoriasis, lupus, all autoimmune disease, meaning your immune system is overreacting and it's made a mistake. It's attacking your own body. And the only way we can do anything about it is to shut that immune system down. By the way, at the very end, if you plan on getting a vaccine, do not take this drug because you have no immune system to be able to handle it and it will kill you.
And by the way,
you cannot handle a virus. If you're going to be around TB, don't take this drug because you'll have no immune system to fend it off. We're going to shut your immune system down. So to your point, Bill, if every drug we're watching on television is designed to shut down an immune system that is now overreacting, of all of the things that could be causing the chronic disease epidemic of our lifetime or the immune system disease of our lifetime, shouldn't we look closest at the one product that is inciting our immune system to inflame and overreact? And we don't do it one time, not 10 times, not 20 times, not 50 times, 72, 75, going towards 100 times. We are sending your body into an immune system overreaction on purpose. And then the drug we make a fortune off is going to take that body that didn't stop overreacting. Suddenly, it's on tilt. It's just running. It's fighting everything in my body. It's causing psoriasis. My hair is falling out. I got itching all over. I've got anal leakage. I've got all sorts of problems. And you know what will fix it? Our drugs. So that's your point. Look, it doesn't look so good. But still, I haven't found the smoking gun email that admits they know they're doing this on purpose. But any idiot, you've got to be an idiot to take these products at this point, based on the advertising you're watching taking place.
Well, and I think it's something above 80%.
Wild mood here. I think I'm drinking way too much coffee, by the way.
I think it's something above like 80% is of the money that they make comes from pharmaceutical. I mean, it's a very large number, so to your point, they're 100% pushing that, supporting that, where are the spots and dots to support it, et cetera. One of the things that I think is important to segue to here at the end of the show before we get to Q&A, talk about Bobby Kennedy and some of the changes that are coming in. And we talk about rebooting the scientific method. We need a full reboot. We need ethics. We need standards that are rational and reasonable. We need trustworthy people. And we all know we can't trust pharma as far as we can throw them because we can't. Yeah. So we have a formidable problem. Bobby's got a formidable problem in every kind of way trying to reel this thing in. But what are your thoughts in terms of a reboot?
I think that Bobby Kennedy and Dr. Marty McCary, Dr. Mehmet Oz, Jay Bhattacharya, this is the dream team, man. We are never going to have a moment like this. Now, how much can they accomplish in the most toxic environment you can ever imagine? As you pointed out, it was pointed out at the top of the show, I was director of communications for Robert Kennedy Jr. I've spent enough time in D.C. to realize I hate that place. It's gross, it's disgusting, it's evil, it's awful. But Bobby was designed for it. We could not have a better person in position there. And he's doing amazing things. There are people, look, we would all love this thing to be able to just flash on a dime overnight. Suddenly the world just gets it, and we're not poisoning people. The world doesn't work that way, especially when you have something like 50,000 employees that are all receiving emails from the CIA saying block Kennedy and Macri at every move. You're doing great things for America. Don't allow them to do the science. I mean, that's what's going on here. But under those circumstances, what a track record. In just, almost exactly, we're coming up on a year now, removing chemical petroleum dyes from children's food, getting lead and arsenic out of baby food and baby formulas, investigations into fluoride, investigations into chemtrails, even by Lee Zeldin, as brought on by, some pressure by Robert Kennedy Jr. This week, some of the most important meetings ever at the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices at the CDC. They're going to finally discuss potentially removing the hepatitis B vaccine recommendation for day one of life, the dumbest vaccine that has ever existed, and so dangerous for no reason whatsoever. A sexually transmitted disease you're only going to come in contact with sharing heroin needles or sleeping with prostitutes. I don't care if you plan on being the worst parent of all times. You still have a couple years where you have to worry about your kid living a life like that. So, I mean, that's finally up for discussion. Real discussions at the advisory committee on the overall toxic effect of all the vaccines together. Of course, mainstream media owned by pharma. Of course, all of them are screaming bloody murder. But you're right. The scientific method is now upon us. Marty Macri just turned down the latest vaccine, flu shot, I believe it was, saying that it appears to have no effect. It's not helping elderly whatsoever, so we're not going to prove it. That was the mRNA version of that vaccine. And what he's saying is clear. We are no longer going to approve vaccines based on the fact that it's creating antibodies inside of your body. That is a false endpoint. It means nothing. As we've seen, even though it's creating antibodies, if it's the wrong antibodies for the wrong strain of flu than the one that is circulating, then there was no point in taking that vaccine. In fact, it is creating a risk. What we're seeing is most times the flu vaccine is causing 4 times the rate of other upper respiratory infections. So you're making yourself sicker. And what he said is vaccines are now going to have to prove that they are reducing the rate of infection of the circulating strain that we are dealing with. I mean, like, this should be a news flash. It's unbelievable that, that we're finally, that's the scientific method. Doesn't that make sense? He didn't say, I'm eradicating vaccines from the planet. He didn't say, I'm totally anti-science. What he's saying is, don't you want me to make sure that that product actually stops the virus that you should be worried about this year? As if it doesn't, you're wasting your money and you're putting yourself at unnecessary risk. So many things like that are finally happening. We still have the COVID vaccine floating around for some, but I'm not even worried about that, Bill, because no one's taking it. Right? The message is out there. We've done our job. You don't have to end that vaccine necessarily if no one's taking it. And also, I think there's some complications with President Trump in there that you have to dance around and his attachment to that particular vaccine. But under the circumstances, we have a stay of execution. And that's all that this is, Bill. We need to build new systems. And we need to be using films like An Inconvenient Study right now to enroll every person we know. If we get relaxed right now simply because Robert Kennedy Jr. is in charge for a couple of years, I assure you, Bill, they're going to come back with a vengeance. They are sitting, strategizing how to rob us of any freedom whatsoever, how to make sure that our choices never matter again so that they never have to explain themselves. They want mandated vaccines. They want us lined up. Not every kid, every adult, too. They showed their hand during COVID. Everybody in Silicon Valley is developing apps to track you, to track your vaccine records, whether you get on a plane or going to a restaurant. If you think that multi-billion-dollar investment by Palantir and everyone else to track your vaccine and medical status has suddenly just been burned, they threw it in the garbage, to hell with that, They are buying their next politicians. They're buying their next moment to finally push that stuff through on you. And the only way we'll stop it will not be because of Robert Kennedy Jr. It will not be because of President Trump. It will be because you showed so many people the truth. Every one of you out there, that we now represent at least 60% of this country, and we're never going to vote in an idiot that's going to take our medical freedom away again.
And even, such an example of that is you walk into a drugstore, and they're still bombarding you with, oh, get your COVID and your flu together, and we'll combine them and make it simple for you. And they sugarcoat this thing, and you feel like Mary Poppins just showed up, to show me the way, But the reality is, I don't see people in line. It's not happening.
No,
okay,
agreed.
So it's working, right?
It
I
is
wanted
working.
to bring Melissa on for some Q&A. It's been a really good show and amazing, amazing information, Del. Melissa, you have a few questions for Del here.
A few. I have been waiting for this opportunity for 4 years, Del.
All right.
So first off, I just want to say something on what you said, and I'm thankful you said it, is it doesn't take a conspiracy theorist mindset to realize what's wrong about these. Take out the depopulation agenda, take out Bill Gates, take all that out. They are not made safely. Right. I witnessed it myself. I saw a recall on shredded cheese today because of heavy metals in the cheese. I worked in quality and saw shards of metal going into your vaccines. That was my job, was to stop those pieces of metal. If I found too many pieces of metal, we had to relook at all of it again. It can be injected into you, which is worse because it's bypassing your body's natural defense system. So I just want to thank you for saying that. It doesn't take a conspiracy theory. Okay. So when I get down to, some people like the idea of vaccines, right? They want to feel some sort of comfort if their child were to get sick or they get sick.
I want to make a point really quick, Melissa, on cheese, because I think I can make a point that's outside of where I'm at. I love cheese. My brother's a vegan. He hates cheese, right? He wants to prove to me that cheese is dangerous. And if he wants to prove to me that there's metal shards in cheese, guess what? Guess who I want testing my cheese? I want my brother testing my cheese. I want the vegan in my family testing my cheese and proving, look, there's heavy metals and everything else. But get it out. Get it out, which is why we should want Robert Kennedy Jr. You don't want someone that loves cheese testing cheese. I want people that hate cheese testing cheese. Then when they tell me it's safe, guess I'm going to believe it. So I just want to make that point.
That's right. And they act like Kennedy is the one in the lab coat and they're doing the studies. Right. So they go, listen to the professionals. I'm like, what are you talking about? Do they think he's doing it? But I guess one of my questions is it possible to make vaccines better? We know, like you mentioned, the mRNA, they're trying to do these things. CRISPR's out there in the world, and the mRNA. Is it possible for people to have a peace of mind in receiving a product like that ever? Or is it just always unsafe to inject something into you?
Look, I think the only way to answer that is to say what I said at the very top of this show. The science is never settled. There are brilliant human beings that find ways through and create things and invent things that are beyond anything that we can imagine. But I will never trust that product actually exists if those same people refuse to test that against a saline injection and show me that it's just as safe. And so until that happens, and I say this, I'm not anti-vaccine. I am pro-science. And I just simply make a habit of never injecting products into me or my children that have never been tested for safety. And I go a step further. If that same product has no liability whatsoever, so there's no liability if it injures me or my children, my red flags are even up a little bit higher. And until those circumstances change, I wouldn't go near any product, no matter how brilliant the person sounds on the television set. I absolutely think that mRNA is the most dangerous technology that we have seen. CRISPR has never worked. It causes cancer and all sorts of other issues. Every gene, look, we have lived for multiple decades now with the dream of gene editing and splicing. Be able to insert a gene in and fix some genetic problem you might have. Once again, just like vaccines, great idea, beautiful idea. Keep working on lab rats, and once you can prove it's safe, and once you can do that in a placebo-based trial and show me that human beings are doing fine, not just for 5 days, not for 6 months. I want to see how they live their lives, and I want to see what their birth rate was. And I want to check the DNA of their kids to see if that change you made in their DNA went all the way into offspring, so that we don't accidentally make a problem that affects our offspring. And if that sounds like a conspiracy theory, go ahead and read about thalidomide. Read about other drugs that affected parents that, the morning, I think there's a sickness pill that caused infertility in the daughters that were born to those mothers, and they didn't know it until they were 25 years old trying to have babies themselves. So we have done things that generationally get passed down. So of all of the products that should have ever been warp speeded into human beings, this was the very last one. mRNA technology, stolen from, as many people say, from gene editing, where it has failed, by the way. To end my point, in the decades of all the greatest scientists in the world, there's a reason you still can't go and have an inserted gene fix your gene problem. Why? Because every time they do it, they cannot make it land exactly where they want it to, and therefore it starts reproducing a problem that turns into cancer most of the time, but all sorts of autoimmune diseases, all things like myocarditis, pericarditis, blood clots, brain hemorrhages, cancer, all of the things we're seeing in the COVID vaccine. It shouldn't be a shocker. But so of all the things, definitely not that technology. Can we green our vaccine, as Jenny McCarthy? She ran on that platform for many years. I doubt it. But look, I'd always be open to it. Show me a long-term double-blind placebo trial, and then show me something that I'm so afraid of that I don't think my kid's own immune system can handle, and we'll talk. But currently, I am happy with my kids catching every disease. And you want to make it go viral? Let me be clear. I don't even care if they catch poliomyelitis or measles. They'll do just fine.
In the studies also, Del, how many of the mice died? Oh, it was 100%.
Yeah, like
right?
all of them, all the ones they didn't kill first.
Right.
Most people can't tell you what polio is.
No.
Most people, they can't even
And
tell
I know. Even in this audience, I just blew somebody's mind. And I'm,
One final question, Melissa.
One final question. Oh no. Okay. We know that it's probably never going to be a thing where Big Pharma comes out and goes, oh yes, we've been doing this for 80 years. This is the problem. Everybody's going to get millions of dollars of payout. We're totally going to go in the shadows now and let Eastern medicine come back, let natural remedies come back. That's never going to happen. So what do you think the justice system looks like, or justice looks like, for those parents whose children have been affected by this? What do you think that actually is the possible outcome? And one last little one, Dr. Bell, I'm sorry, but where can people find the inserts and vaccines on their own?
So let's start with the last question first. It's very important. Everyone can read every insert. First of all, I'd recommend, if you still believe in your pediatrician, ask them to hand it to you and just see what kind of attitude you get. If they're really open-minded, say, oh, great, yeah, I'll read it with you. Let's read through it. Or here, let me go get it for you. Then you have a very special pediatrician and you may want to hold on to them. If they give you attitude, like, why are you questioning me? And they try to bully you, that should be the last and final sign that you are in the wrong place with someone that does not care about your child and does not have enough information. What are bullies? Bullies are people with no information. We knew them in school. They weren't the smartest kid. The valedictorian was never the bully in the school. There's a reason for that. Because if you can argue your way, if you can make a point, you don't bully people and steal their lunch money. Okay, so that's it. But you can look up the vaccine insert. Just go to FDA licensed vaccines, Google it. FDA licensed vaccines. Now, it could be a little daunting because it's a huge list, but there's only 16 vaccines made by, some of them are made by several different companies, so you have different versions. But then what you want to do this at the same time, pull up CDC recommended childhood schedule And that will give you the list of everything that your kid's supposed to get, and then read it and then look up the ones, and then you click on it. When you click on it, you'll see something called package insert. Click on that. That is the package insert that arrived. That's the warning label that arrived. And it's got little tiny writing, but you can blow it up. You're doing this on a computer. And you can read, and you can go to sections. What is the ingredients in this product? Some of them you may have to look up. You may not, when you see numbers and letters, you won't recognize that that's actually aborted fetal DNA. But if you punch it in and Google, I don't understand what that is, it'll tell you what it is. And then what I always say is go to section 6.1. On every single one of these, that's where my work has lived. That is where they determined that this vaccine was safe enough to inject in your children. This is the trial they relied upon. Remember, they are giving you their best hand. They are laying down what they think is their royal flush on safety at 6.1. And I would start with, if you want to really have your mind blown, just type in, go to Recombavax HB. This is the hepatitis B vaccine given on day 1 of life. Do it before it gets cut from the schedule this week. But click on that, go to 6.1 and read that they thought a study of 147 children total, analyzed for 5 days after each injection, 5 days, with no placebo group, was a good enough safety study to now mandate injecting that into every day 1 old baby in the United States of America, and go as far as calling Child Protective Services on you if you don't do it. So start there and then read all of them. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your children, and read the adverse events at 6.2, right after 6.1, and start reading what they know are the side effects of these products, and then ask yourself, what was the original death rate of this, of this infection before this vaccine ever came along? I mean, you'll recognize that hepatitis B is so rare, it's incredible. Measles, death rate 1 in 500,000 in America. So that's that point. To the cost of those that have been injured, I have a real hair up my ass this week on this issue specifically. You know what the answer is? There's not enough money in the world. This thing is going to be so expensive, and it's the motive behind all of this. The astronomical costs, if our government was to ever admit that vaccines, for instance, cause autism, it is tens of trillions of dollars that they would have to pay out based on the numbers that we've seen. There's cases that have settled for 5 million, cases that have settled for 20 million. If you take that lower number, it is so astronomical. It would not just bankrupt our vaccine system. It would not just bankrupt our healthcare system. It will bankrupt the United States of America. That is how big this is. So unfortunately, for those people out there that hope that everyone will one day be reimbursed for this crime, I hope you lined up years ago, because it's only going to pay the first few people before the entire thing comes crashing down. And that is the motive for covering it up. They're too deep. They've lied for way too long. Our government should have never taken on the liability. And I would recommend to Donald Trump, put the liability right back on the industry right now, because it's all right. We'll lose Pfizer. We'll lose Moderna. I don't want to lose the United States of America. And that's how big this lawsuit will be.
I think, Del, we could lose them, and we need to. I don't think that you can put the genie back in the bottle the way it's coming out.
No.
And, we're reaching the end of our show today. I wanted to get just a couple of final thoughts before we end from you, in terms of where we go from here, and ICANN, and basically where people can go and get more informed, that don't do this every day like we do. So some final thoughts before we end.
Yeah, final thought. There's no greater tool in the world today than an inconvenient study. It is so clearly laid out. I'm so proud of my team and the work we did to put it together, but it's also a set of miracles. I think God is a part of this, that made this study possible, that inspired Dr. Marcus Zervos to even do this study in one of the best databases in the world. As you said, this is a genie. It's been let out. They're trying to pack it back in. They've threatened to sue me over this story. but it is in your hands, and you need to use it. We need masses now, not just in America, around the world. This is a world war that is being waged by the pharmaceutical industry. That is all that COVID was. Every world war before COVID was one nation against another nation, or one hemisphere against another hemisphere. COVID was the first time that every government in the world attacked the rights of its own people. It was the governments against the people, and it was funded and supported and created by the pharmaceutical industry and all of its lackeys at WHO and WEF. They are not done. They are not going away. They have not given up. They are still the most funded, biggest, most powerful lobby in the world. And by the way, every other nation almost in the world has now collapsed. If you look at the censorship happening on social media in England, people are being arrested for speaking their truth. In Europe, it is going down all over. The WHO is doubling down. The European Union has just decided, and England, that the reason COVID was such a disaster was they weren't harsh enough. That is what they just determined in their own court systems, that they didn't act fast enough or harsh enough. Not that we were a total failure, the vaccines didn't work, and the lockdowns destroyed more lives than that disease ever should have or would have or could have. So they haven't learned the lesson, and they are preparing for a final battle. You are going to be a part of that battle, whether you like it or not, and I would say stop whining about it. The great, what is it, Confucius that said, or somebody said, may you live in interesting times. We have never been more important as a species on this planet than right now, today. More important than our founding fathers, more important than John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington is you right now, because the United States of America stands as the last remaining beacon of hope and light for freedom in the world. And the pharmaceutical industry and the WHO and the Bill Gateses of the world and the future of AI is designing to take it away from you. It will be either lost or won by us, by this generation, by us staring at this computer together right now. It will be on us. We will either lay on our deathbed, as George Washington did and Thomas Jefferson did. I love the story of Jefferson and John Adams, both dying on the 4th of July, by the way, the same 4th of July. An amazing idea. As the bombs were, fireworks were going off, realizing what they did in this world. It will be bigger than that when we die. Did we leave our children with freedom and sovereignty over their own bodies? Or did we chicken out? Did we hide? Did we decide to not upset the Christmas dinner by bringing this topic up? Did we not share an inconvenient study with everyone we knew we could have? Did we not do our part? It won't be about meeting our maker. God won't have to tell us what happened here. We'll know who was responsible. And if we won, that death will be a great death.
Del, incredible. It's been amazing to have you on today, Del. Look forward to maybe following up down the road with more information as things evolve. They're going to continue to evolve. As you mentioned, they're not done. There's more planned, more money's been spent. It's when is it going to execute. And so, being aware and preparing yourselves for more of the same and maybe worse is important. Thanks for joining us on In the Lion's Den today. Take care.
Blue lights and sirens, yeah, it's time to go. No time to defund us. You should know that we're not perfect. We're human, we're flawed. Just say to some grace for the sake of us all.